Welcome to the focused video on the inner bolus pressure mark and the inner bolus pressure pattern label. The inner bolus pressure mark has been added if Chicago 4 analysis has been selected through the properties page. This mark can help speed the analysis of primary and secondary swallows, as well as the rapid drink challenge swallows. Inner bolus pressure represents fluid caught in the esophageal body that does not escape the esophagus as quickly as usual. Inner bolus pressure comes in three different patterns. EGJ pressurization is pressure caught between the LES and the diaphragm in the case of a hernia. This is the least commonly seen form of inner bolus pressure, and Z-View does not mark or give a pattern for EGJ pressurization, but the reviewer can mark it manually under the IBPP drop-down menu. The other two forms of inner bolus pressure, compartmentalized and panesophageal, will be discussed here. Compartmentalized pressure is pressure in the esophagus that is trapped between the contractile front and the EGJ, and could be due to a poorly relaxing EGJ or a mechanical obstruction such as a stricture, a tumor, or even a hiatal hernia. With Chicago 3, compartmentalized pressurization was described as pressure exceeding 30 millimeters of mercury, surrounded by the black isocontour line. In this swallow, there is such pressure as this thin vertical band here, and the software is detecting that, giving a value of 30 and labeling this swallow as having compartmentalized pressurization. With Chicago 4, it no longer needs to exceed 30 millimeters of mercury. Exceeding 20 millimeters of mercury is enough for compartmentalization. Note that the distal latency is not set on the front end of the compartmentalization, but instead on the contractile front. Pressurization is described as a fairly uniform pressure vertically through an area of the esophagus. So it is important not to extend the box too far up into the areas of pressure, because then the pressure is not uniform from top to bottom. So if you feel there's compartmentalized pressure, you may need to lower your box below the contractile front in order to get the label to switch to compartmentalized. The IBP mark is initially set to the left of the circle for the distal latency mark. If there is no distal latency, Z-View will do its best to give an initial placement for the box, but the box location may need to be adjusted. The entire box can be picked up, or a single edge of the box can be moved. This way, inner bolus pressure and the inner bolus pressure pattern can be marked while reviewing a particular swallow and adjusting other marks, rather than having to make inner bolus pressure pattern adjustments manually in the metrics. Panesophageal pressurization is pressure caught between the pressure area of the UES and the pressure area of the LES in a straight up and down column of pressure exceeding 30 millimeters of mercury. In this case, Z-View has placed the IBP mark based on the latency. If the latency mark is corrected, the IBP mark will come with it and be on the left side of the distal latency mark. In order to mark panesophageal pressurization, the box needs to be extended all the way up into the middle of the UES. When you release, the box will snap down to the top edge of the esophageal body. Z-View is looking for consistent pressure all the way between the UES and LES that exceeds 30 millimeters of mercury, and it did not quite meet that threshold, so no pressurization was noted. If it's acceptable within your practice to mark additional bands of pressurization, the IBP mark can be extended over a later band that does exceed 30 millimeters of mercury, and then panesophageal pressurization can be labeled. If at any time the reviewer disagrees, they remain in control of what is labeled for a particular swallow, including the option to have the inner bolus pressure pattern be blank. For the rapid drink challenge, Chicago 4 is most concerned with panesophageal pressurization that may occur during the drink period. So the IBP mark can be expanded over that entire span and all the way up to the middle of the UES. The fact that it overlays the IDCI box is fine. The inner bolus pressure area will be scanned for consistent pressure from the UES to the LES, and in this measurement, it only needs to exceed 20 millimeters of mercury. Although this particular maneuver had panesophageal that exceeded 30 and 20, if there were only 20 millimeters of mercury, it still would find it as panesophageal. This concludes the focused video on inner bolus pressure and inner bolus pressure pattern.